Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm painting in Artrage using a new method for oil painting, and I use this new method to paint this painting in the tutorial. This all came out of doing this painting of this gentleman in this cool yellow garment against that bright blue sky. I love the way this came out, and I developed this starting method, this sort of way of going into and starting an oil painting while I did that demo. And I came home that day and I thought, I should do a video about that because I think it was fast and it was simple, and I think it makes things just easier, for digital artists. So if you're someone that is new to digital art, or you're someone that's been doing it a while, but you always are interested, if you're like me, you're always interested in new methods and fast methods and efficient methods. And I really feel like this was one of those things. So it covers some of the tools in Artrage that I haven't covered very much, and maybe at all. And so I thought it was just something I needed to make a video of. So that's what we're going to do today. But real quick, just want to talk to you about what I'm doing here. When I paint, I like to sort of think about things as just big shapes first. And if you know me, I think about things as big shapes all the time. So I just draw the women's garments, like the dresses, as circles, draw their torsos as their heads as more circles, and the torsos as just these kind of elliptical shapes or V-like shapes, and that's it. Keeping things really, really simple is the key all along, and you can see me doing that here. So just kind of finding the basic arrangement through these geometric shapes is the key. And even here, like where I draw the arm and I make it a bit too long, and it's like it doesn't matter because we'll come back and we'll fix it. It's just more about getting the big shapes in there and going from there. But let's talk about why this all matters so much and what this method is and why it's so helpful. I was out oil painting with some of my friends. We were doing some plein air painting, and some of the group were like some pretty amazing plein air painters, like Dave Santillanes, for example, who's like a world-renowned painter for plein air. And others were not as world-renowned, but definitely fantastic artists. Now, real quickly, let me take a break from that story and just say, here's what I'm doing today. This is kind of the most important step. I'm using the Square Canvas 2 brush, and this is one of the custom brush options that comes installed with Artrage. It's in the presets. So you go into presets, go into artistic. So there's artistic blenders, and a number of other options. I have my own set of my own brushes in there too. But if you go in there and look in artistic, scroll down, like you can see about 3/4 of the way, you'll see these canvas textured brushes, and the Square Canvas 2 brush is amazing. And I've done a video or two about it in the past. But what I liked about this video and how it's a little different is I just use it really big. Keep it as big as you can and just grab color and make big textural marks using the Square Canvas 2 brush. And then what we'll do after that is use some of my own custom brushes that I've made for Artrage, and the oil brush and the palette knife. The palette knife, actually, in that image in the beginning of the man in the yellow, that painting was done almost exclusively with Square Canvas and the palette knife, using the palette knife as a painting tool with the brush loaded at 100%. In this case, I'd used the Square Canvas brush, and I used just some of my own custom brushes, and they work basically, very similarly to the palette knife. I mean, my own custom brushes are there's a different feel and different look, and it's I like it, it's cool, but you don't have to do that. You can use the palette knife and the oil brush, so you don't have to go in and join my Patreon or anything to get those brushes. You can just kind of do everything with the tools that are built into the software. So very, very fun stuff, though. You can see already after just a very short amount of time, we have a cool looking image here. And I want to go back to that concept of process. The process that I have when I paint, either traditionally or digitally, is identical. It is to very simply block in the biggest shapes in the most geometric way, and then to quickly go in and block in your darkest darks, and then move to your midtones, then move to your highlights, keeping all of it very simple, very geometric, and very blocky, just like everything is really like an approximation of what it will look like. And the idea of there is to give yourself just one job at a time, one thing to do at a time, and keep your order of operations really like simple, really basic, and really easy to remember. What I want when I paint is for it to be automatic. I want it to feel like after a long day at work or at school or, leaving the park or whatever, you just get in your car and you drive home. You don't think, which road should I take? How much do I push on the accelerator? You just go because you know how to drive and you know where your house is and you know how to get there. And that's the exact same way you want your brain to be sort of engaging with painting, is that you know what you want, you know where you're going, and you know how to get there. If I think back to that example I was saying about painting plein air with some friends, of course, Dave and myself have like, oh yeah, we know the process. We know how to paint. We know what we're doing, and we know how to get there. But there were some very good artists there who didn't have that process kind of nailed down yet. And for them, the process and therefore the outcome were more of like a crapshoot. It was more mysterious, like what's going to happen here today. And while for all of us, we can have bad days painting and have good process and still get poor outcomes, it's not like it's foolproof. It does help a lot to have a method that just keeps things very, very simple. And you can see here, like the benefit of that, like I'm taking that big concept of light, dark, and midtone, and I'm applying it to her arm, where I'm applying light tones, dark tones, and midtone strokes, and just keeping those strokes very blocky and simple. And it just works. If I want to go in there, zoom in on my canvas and refine that down, I totally can. But it isn't necessary. It isn't going to make the painting necessarily better. It's just a different style. But for this particular method, for digital painting, kind of getting into the specificity of Artrage instead of like oil paints with a real canvas or something, or painting in Photoshop or Rebelle or something else, I think there is a really strong case to be made for using the square canvas 2 brush as your foundational layer for the painting, and then following up with either palette knife or custom brushes or the oil brush, the standard oil brush. Any of those three as a finishing layer or finishing brush on top of the square canvas 2 brush is fantastic. The reason why the square canvas brush works so well is because it's incredibly blocky. So what it does is it leans into that concept of keeping everything as simple geometric shapes. And when you're painting with like what basically is like a square block, but that square block has textural nuance, and then it has blending potential as well. So you both get, when you go brush over just raw canvas or the blank canvas, you're going to get texture. When you brush over already existing paint, you're going to get blending. And so you do have this like great mix of having some geometry and some blockiness, which creates unity, because if all the marks are made of kind of a similar shape, it's going to create a harmony, a unity there. And then you're going to get some variety when you get the blending. And then when you have areas where it's like on kind of bare or raw canvas, you're going to get texture. And so that creates enough kind of interest just in that underpainting layer using the square canvas brush to be very successful. And I also love, because it's a big, square, chunky canvas brush, if you can keep it nice and big, that it will just kind of force you to avoid detail, which is just going to be good for you to remember to just stay away from that in the beginning. But you can see here what I'm using is what I call fast oils. They're my good fast-performing oil brush tools that I've made available on my Patreon. And the reason I did that is because those people are awesome. They help give me a few dollars a month or more for making YouTube videos, and that blows my mind. And so I always want to make sure that I try to thank those people. So I try to give them the tools that I have. And so these tools I like a lot. They're the first set of oil brushes I made in Artrage were kind of slow. They were like too much special sauce going on with them, and so they weren't really like very well performing. I like the outcome. I like the stamp textures and stuff, but they were just a little chunky and slow in performance. These ones though work really well, and they're fast, and I like how they blend. And you can see a lot of different cool blending marks and how angular the marks are. I really often aim for more of that flat instead of a filbert look. And so, especially with digital, I think in traditional I can kind of be more versatile, but with digital I like to be more chunky. So here I'm using the splatter brush. It's also one of the custom brush tool presets, but you don't have to. I mean, you could stay just with 1 or 2 brushes and do the whole painting, but I do like using the splatter as a softener. It acts like a nice blending tool. And another thing worth exploring is that the canvas brushes, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, there's like, a handful, 5 or 6 of them that are really good. But the square canvas 2 brush is my favorite. And that said, this painting, I just felt like it was too fun. It was fun because it required almost no thinking. And that's kind of a surprise, because when you're painting an overhead shot of foreshortened figures who are layered together with a lot of soft edges, it could become a kind of a complicated painting. But taking this very simplified approach to it, it was easy. It was like fast, and a couple of the initial drawing problems I fixed when I just kind of went painting through this, and then it was just fun. And I think when you have something that feels simple and feels fun, even when it's kind of a more complicated subject or complicated point of view, you're on to something. And that's why I wanted to share this with you guys today. So hopefully you'll give this a shot. Artrage has a lot of cool things built into it, and this is definitely one of them. I always feel like the square canvas presets should be more front and center, because they do make the work easier, and I think that's what you want. You really do. Here I'm just using the oil brush, and I'm just painting in these saucer sort of shapes that are embedded in the tapestry that these women are sitting on, and it gives a little variety to it, gives it a little bit more interest, and the kind of patterning that comes in that fabric from there is just nice to look at. I'm using here the palette knife to get a little bit more edge and blend a little bit into the background. I've loaded the palette knife up with some paint so that it has a little bit more of like just sort of like a nice crisp edge when you paint with it. And at this point I'm just playing around, testing out all kinds of stuff to see what might work as a finishing layer. But I think anything that's happening here is not all that important. This is sort of like, sprinkles on top of the sundae. It's, it's the ice cream and the fudge that matter. Here we're just kind of decorating a little bit and seeing if we can add just a little bit of interest at the very end. And I'm not quite sure that it does all that much, but it was fun to play around with. And there's a lot of tools you can get in there and play with. One other thing I want to point out before I wrap this painting up is just look at how simplified the hands and the feet and the figures are. I mean, they're really, really simple. I mean, the woman's hand at the top part of the canvas just looks like a wedge or like a carrot or something. But certainly I could go in and refine that a bit. But for this kind of rough approach, even I guess I probably should go in and refine it a little bit. But for this rough approach, it's totally fine. And I think I just wanted more than anything, more than showing you that I can draw a hand or a foot, I just wanted to show you an approach to painting that keeps things simple. And I hope that really worked for you guys. Let me know in the comments if you're into this, and best wishes, and take care. Thanks for checking out the video. Bye-bye.